Okay, let's dive right into this. Welcome to today's explainer, where we are unpacking a legacy sequel that has literally been 20 years in the making. I mean, think about it. Since 2006, the media and fashion landscapes have completely transformed, right? But somehow, the allure of Runway magazine has remained just as potent. Today, we're putting the Devil Wears Prada 2 under the microscope. We really want to see if Miranda Priestley's highly anticipated return still has that legendary, cutting-edge bite, or if it's, just kind of coasting on the coattails of nostalgia. To do this right, we've got a structured roadmap for our review today. First up, we'll look at a groundbreaking return. Second, a spoiler-free plot summary. Third, we'll dive into performances and character evolution. Fourth is directing and visual style, followed by themes in modern media. And lastly, we'll wrap up with our final verdict and rating. Let's get started. Section 1, a groundbreaking return. 20 years later, is Miranda still in fashion? So, bringing Meryl Streep, Anne Hathaway, and Emily Blunt back to a fashion world that has so drastically evolved over the last 2 decades, yeah, that is no small feat. But what the filmmakers have done here is actually pretty brilliant. They completely recognize that they couldn't just rehash that mid-2000s excess we all remember. The world of print media has fundamentally changed, and so this film grounds our beloved characters right in the modern, very real anxieties of the digital age. This isn't just a nostalgic cash grab, folks. It's an earnest attempt to see exactly how these titans operate when the ground beneath them is constantly shifting. Just look at what Variety had to say. They note the film is made with deep intelligence and respect, but they call it a kind of tribute act, and that phrasing is absolutely crucial. It basically tells us that while the film is super comforting and deeply respectful of the original, it might be playing things just a little bit safe. Opting to replay the greatest hits rather than totally reinventing the wheel. Moving on to Section 2. Spoiler-free plot summary. Where are they now? Don't worry, we're keeping this strictly high level. We catch up with Andy Sachs, who is now this award-winning investigative journalist. But plot twist, she's abruptly laid off from her prestigious job at the New York Vanguard. Suddenly jobless, she gets offered a role to return to Runway to rehabilitate the magazine's image. And why does it need saving? Well, Miranda Priestley is facing intense scrutiny and potential cancellation over an editorial misstep involving fast fashion labor practices. Meanwhile, Emily Charlton has climbed the ladder to become a massively powerful executive over at Dior. So those Vanguard layoffs force Andy right back into Miranda's HR-scrutinized orbit, but the power dynamics are a whole new ballgame now. Section 3. Performances and character evolution, maturing and stilettos. Now, what's really interesting about this is how that 20-year gap gives the actors this tremendous, rich, lived-in history to play with. Look at the stark contrast in Andy's journey. Back in 2006, she was this terrified, naive assistant, desperately seeking approval. But flash forward to 2026, and Anne Hathaway brings this incredibly mature, self-assured energy to the screen. She's no longer the girl just trying to survive Runway. She's an award-winning journalist who knows her worth. She finally controls her own narrative, and that makes her interactions with Miranda so much more layered this time around. And then, oh man, there's Emily. In 2006, she was the overworked, desperate assistant, literally making herself sick to go to Paris. Today, Emily Blunt absolutely steals the show. She completely leans into her new status as a titan of luxury retail. She's incredibly confident, pulling all the industry strings, and her interests now actively clash with Miranda's. Honestly, watching her operate at the top of the food chain, still armed with those signature cutting remarks, is just a total joy. But of course, we have to talk about Meryl Streep. The Jam Report hit the nail on the head here, noting the subtle humanization at play. The film actually allows Miranda to show these tiny, tightly controlled cracks in her immaculate exterior. And the irony is just delicious. Watching this once terrifying titan of publishing being forced to fly coach or navigate modern body positivity rules, it's wild. Watching Streep recalibrate Miranda for a world that doesn't just blindly bend to her will anymore, while still maintaining total command, is literally a masterclass in acting. The supporting cast is stacked too. Stanley Tucci returns as Nigel, and thank goodness, because he provides the returning warmth and emotional backbone this film really needs. We've also got Kenneth Branagh playing Miranda's surprisingly supportive new husband, and Patrick Bermal as Andy's new love interest, though honestly, critics have noted that romance feels a bit dreary and stalls the plot. BJ Novak steps in as the clueless corporate heir threatening Runway's legacy, and Simone Ashley really shines as the new, hyper-HR-conscious assistant. Oh, and definitely keep your eyes peeled for a fleeting but highly discussed cameo by Lady Gaga. Moving along to Section 4, Directing and Visual Style, a new look for a new era. If we look behind the scenes, the creative DNA remains incredibly intact, retaining the original director, David Frankel, writer Aline Brosh McKenna, And composer Theodore Shapiro really explains why the rhythmic banter feels so authentic to the original classic. The biggest change? Patricia Field didn't return for costumes. Instead, Molly Rogers took the reins, and she beautifully updates the wardrobe for a modern audience, giving it a slightly more elevated, less chaotic 2026 aesthetic.
However, we have to put on our film critique hats for a second and look objectively at the counter perspective. Slash Film argues that the movie occasionally plays like an expensive knockoff. Several critics have specifically called out pacing issues, noting that a massive Italian fashion show sequence in the third act, while visually stunning, completely ruins the narrative momentum right when the plot should be speeding up.
But, even with those pacing issues, you can't deny that the visual callbacks and spectacles still provide that exact high-gloss fantasy audiences are craving. That Milan sequence set to Madonna's Vogue is unbelievably vibrant, and yes, for sure, there is a very clever return of the iconic cerulean sweater. It's fan service, absolutely, but it's the kind that longtime fans will thoroughly enjoy.
Section 5. Themes in Modern Media. The Death of Print.
So the crucial point is that beneath all the sequins and witty banter, this explainer wouldn't be complete without touching on the surprisingly heavy thematic core of the film. It really tackles the rapid decline of traditional print media head-on. We literally see these legendary characters forced to chase digital clicks and appease TikTok algorithms just to keep the lights on. It dives into the tensions of strict new HR guidelines, the threat of cancel culture, and the very real looming shadow of AI replacing creatives. It's basically a surprisingly academic breakdown of a dying journalistic landscape where human editors are being replaced by code. The Gem Report summarized this feeling perfectly, saying there's a real sense of mourning here, disguised beneath glamour. And they're so right. It gives the sequel this poignant, almost melancholic bite. It heavily mirrors the real-world anxieties in fashion journalism right now, especially echoing the departure of Anna Wintour from Vogue. It's a stark recognition that an entire meaningful era of publishing is just slipping away. And that brings us to Section 6, Final Verdict and Rating, the Ultimate Consensus. Let's synthesize all of this. And this brilliantly illustrates where the critics landed. It's been a somewhat mixed response, to be honest, with Metacritic sitting at a 59, Slash Film at a 60, and Fresh Fiction giving it a rather brutal 40. The consensus paints a clear picture. While critics found it highly watchable, mostly thanks to the sheer charm of the cast, it undeniably lacks the sharp, biting edge and narrative tightness of the 2006 original. The Jam Report points out that the film rarely takes major risks, opting for satisfaction over complexity. And honestly, that's exactly what's happening. Our affection for Andy, Emily, Miranda, and Nigel is doing all the heavy lifting here. It makes for a deeply enjoyable, fun ride, but ultimately, it's a very safe one that kind of sands down the sharp edges we loved so much the first time around. So here is our definitive score. We're giving The Devil Wears Prada 2 a 6.5 out of 10. It is a solid, stylish, but slightly weightless legacy sequel. It totally justifies its existence by tackling the modern media landscape, but it just relies a bit too heavily on the magic of its past to truly break any new ground. Which leaves us with a pretty big question to wrap up today's explainer. Does leaning on nostalgia hinder a legacy sequel from truly becoming groundbreaking? Can you ever capture lightning in a bottle twice if you're too busy looking backward? Think about that for a bit. Thank you so much for joining us for this explainer. Keep thinking critically, keep learning, and we will absolutely catch you in the next one.